Can you believe it? Now that the fourth episode has aired, we're already halfway through the first season of Alien Earth. I think it's nice that TV shows come with the big budgets and cinematic feels these days, but the episode loads are definitely smaller, and we'll be lucky if we get a second season before 2 years have passed. But that's the way of things, and let's just enjoy it while it lasts. I'm here today to talk about Season 1, Episode 4, Observation, aka the one where Wendy learns to talk to aliens. I'd say this one has the least to offer by way of action sequences, so no big spaceship crashes, no xenomorph rampages, but what we do get is an offering of good character moments, interactions, and strong dialogue. We also get some unnerving moments. I think it's here where the series really gets to show just how effective it can be in its balance of the tried-and-true, heady science fiction ideas, along with a showcase of the nasty, gross alien experimentation. Once again, I'll warn you of spoilers to follow. The episode opens in the usual kind of way, with the title slowly appearing along with some recap imagery, but we get it spliced with something new and different here. We see the waves on the shore of the Neverland Research Island. We see something washed up on the shore. It looks like a head. Is it a human head? A discarded head of a failed synthetic? We get closer and we see that it's neither. It's a doll's head. Just a child's plaything, separated from its body and left behind. This, I suppose, is symbolic of something that maybe the show wasn't quite ready to talk about until now. We already know the setup from episode 1. Boy Cavalier has taken these sick, dying children and given them a new lease on life by transferring their minds into the bodies of adult synthetics. It's an amazing achievement it apparently took a decade to prepare for. It will usher in a new era for humanity, where death and decay is a thing of the past, and the human essence can live on in a new and improved vessel. But how well did it really work? Can a life truly be extended by this method, or is it just really effective in collecting all the memories and traits of a person and transferring them into a machine that believes they are the same human inside? Arthur Sylvia's blunt concern expressed to Dame in a heated conversation is this: if we did this wrong, best case, we've got a bunch of AIs running around thinking they're human, and worst case, we killed 6 kids. Dame doesn't even want to consider this scenario, and that part of the conversation goes no further, but the idea has been laid out for us to consider. Maybe this will be an ongoing topic of debate for viewers. Some will say, yes, it's exactly what was shown. The children's lives all continued in synthetic bodies. Others will say it's not that simple. Something else is going on, and it will remain ambiguous. Or maybe, and this I guess is becoming my mantra for the series, maybe something will be revealed later. As each episode passes, we're always left hanging on something, but so far I've noticed it's never been exactly the type of cliffhanger you might expect. The last episode, for example. You'd almost think that if they had structured episodes 2 and 3 differently, the big cliffhanger wouldn't have been Hermit being snatched up and Wendy running off to save him. It would have been their potential deaths in the opening of episode 3. But it leaves us hanging in different and unexpected ways, and each time so far the focus has solely been on Wendy and her story, and where her decisions are going to take her. Observation is no exception. The last time around, Wendy had become overwhelmed by the noises of the aliens, communications that only she can hear. She collapsed outside Kirsch's lab. It picks up here with her awakening, met with many questions. Boy Cavalier is especially interested, and his patience is running thin with those around him. He dismisses Kirsch, not finding him useful in this particular matter, and dismisses Dame Sylvia, who he finds to be, if not obstructive, then at least distracting. He's intuitive enough. He knows well enough what's going on between her and Wendy, and that so far has gone unspoken, but he cuts right to the matter here. "You're not her mother," he tells her. "This is an IT issue, not a gab session." Not necessarily true. He's very interested in the gab, but it's the alien gab he wants to know more about. Wendy describes the xenomorph sounds as something like bugs rubbing their legs together. The baby alien, she says, was screaming. Arthur and Hermit, who has come to be by Wendy's side, want to see if they can get the sounds to stop. Boy K and Wendy object to that idea. They want to know what the aliens are saying, and they want to know if they can talk back to them. With Boy's encouragement, Wendy is able to translate in a way, and speak in a frequency that humans can hear. The boy genius is thrilled. And you know what, I am too. How the aliens communicate and what exactly they may be saying has always been a subject of great interest to me, and I'm always eager to find out more about how exactly that could work. Sources such as the Weyland-Yutani Report and the Alien RPG have suggested that the aliens can communicate using some form of telepathy. We've seen that concept play out in stories such as Aliens Infiltrator and Alien Sea of Sorrows. Even in Alien Resurrection, to an extent, Ripley 8, the part human, part alien clone, can hear or sense the Hive and the Queen. Nothing so far in incredible detail, and I think that's something being promised by this series, especially considering how this episode ended, but we'll get to that. The question on Boy Cavalier's mind, at this moment anyway, is if the aliens are speaking to Wendy, or if they're speaking to each other and she can just hear them. He believes the latter. This whole aspect brings with it a lot of questions. One of the big ones being, why is it only Wendy that can hear them? What makes her so special that she would be able to hear them? Or that they chose to let her hear them? She actually says that herself. I think they chose me. It's not as if the aliens could recognize her social standings in the group of hybrids, that she's technically the oldest and in charge and favored because she was the first. Nor would they really care about that, if they have the ability to care or not care for anything outside their own propagation anyway. Then again, maybe they did sense some kind of willfulness inside her, brought on by the strong emotions for her brother, that could aid them in some way. But they'd have to be able to control her. Another example of xenomorph telepathy we've seen in the past came from the original Aliens comics from Dark Horse's first run. In this storyline, the aliens would enter humans' dreams, even humans who had never seen or heard of the aliens before. The figures would take over and consume them, drawing them closer to the Queen Mother Xenomorph. It would follow them into their waking life, giving them a longing to become part of this great, unified family, a part of the Hive. So much so, they developed into a cult with the sole purpose of letting themselves become hosts and coercing others into doing the same. The psychological takeover was so strong that this was all they wanted. Could the aliens be slowly taking over Wendy's mind so that she may take similar actions? How much have they gotten into her mind at this point, if at all? In a later scene with Cavalier, Wendy refers to Kirsch's experimentations with the alien. "You shouldn't have cut them open," she says. "Did they say that?" he asks. "No," she replies, then stops. "I don't know." Is she holding something back? Is that something she really believes, or did the aliens really tell her that? Is every thought and every decision Wendy makes from this point forward somehow going to be actually influenced by the aliens, and she doesn't even realize it? That plays into another theme of this episode, and the series with its hybrid technology as a whole, of free will. We see the other Lost Boys in practice, testing the limits of their own free will and their own defiances. Some of it on the surface is harmless enough. We have Toodles, who has really taken to his work in the lab with Kirsch and has become fascinated with the world of science, but unhappy with his name. He argues to Kirsch that Toodles isn't so much a name for a grown man and a serious scientist, more like a code name like Sport or Chief. He suggests his real name should be Isaac, after Isaac Newton. Kirsch doesn't seem to have a problem with this, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how Boy Cavalier may feel. Slightly has been thrust into the world of adulthood by having to consider moral and ethical dilemmas thanks to his encounters with Morrow. They're still in communications, and Morrow is still very determined to get those specimens back. A lot of people pointed this out in the comments of my last video, and yes, it just completely did not register with me that back at the crash site, Morrow had implanted a tracking and communication device on Slightly's neck. So I guess he isn't quite as advanced as Wendy when it comes to hacking into competitor technology, but he certainly makes up for that with his cunning. He convinces Slightly that stealing back a specimen is the right thing to do, that despite any loyalty he may feel to Boy Cavalier and to Prodigy, the fact is the specimens belong to Weyland-Yutani. In the simplest of terms that a child could understand, he asks if it's really stealing if you're just stealing it back from the person who stole it in the first place. How can you steal from a thief? This mission is more difficult for Slightly than he anticipates, and he wants to back out, but Morrow has raised the stakes. When speaking to Slightly, he found out his real name, Arush Singh, and tracked down his family. Morrow also revealed his own name, first name being Kumi. In an interview, he talked about how his first name was meant to be a significant reveal, and in my previous video, my imagination went wild and I made a pretty big deal of it. I'd like to thank everyone in the comments, by the way, who predicted that his first name would be Tom, as in tomorrow. You cheeky monkeys. Kumi, Morrow says, is a Ghanaian name. The origin of this, in Ghana, can be interpreted as meaning forceful. That's significant enough as it relates to the character, and fits quite well, but if it goes beyond that, I don't know. But there is an implication that Morrow brings with the surprise he revealed to Slightly, by sitting in his former home with his mother, waiting for his brothers to arrive, that he could do harm to his family. That's not at all a bluff you'd want to call, especially if you're a frightened child, so we could assume Morrow would really do something if he had to. He likes to think of himself as a good guy, even refers to himself as one, but given his obsession with reclaiming the specimens, there's really no telling just how far he'll go. After all, he let the Maginot's crew die. He chained up 2 soldiers at the crash site and left them for dead, so he may not hesitate to take drastic actions in the name of the greater good, or what he believes to be the greater good. He gives Slightly 24 hours to find a host for a facehugger and get them impregnated with a specimen. This is a very grown-up dilemma for a child's fragile and vulnerable mind. But what choice does he really have? Even when you look at a character like Curly, who had a big moment in the previous episode with her proposal to sort of woo Boy K and become his favorite, she's pushed aside a little bit and outside of the action. I think it's true of anyone, incredible hybrid, synthetic or otherwise, that if you make it your focus to be like someone else, or act a certain way to please or impress someone else, your own personality gets lost in the process. She's already given up a lot in order to be favored by Cavalier, and it doesn't seem to be working, and he sees this and seems to be bored by it. He even has to remind her that he wants the truth from her, not just what she thinks he wants to hear. We can only imagine the jealousy she's feeling at Wendy's special ability to speak to the aliens, and we're going to have to keep a further eye on her to see just how far she may be willing to go to be the favorite. While not one of the Lost Boys, Hermit may as well be one. Held in captivity, no more than another asset to Cavalier. The boy genius and Adam Ines believe he can be of some use. Hermit and Ines share a good scene together, where the poor young medic's free will is pretty much thrown out the window. Stay here, work for us, even be with your sister. Or get sent off this private research island, go home, never see your sister again, and good luck paying off the bill for that new lung. Ines asks if Hermit truly believes it really is his sister inside this new synthetic body. Not unlike Dame Sylvia, Hermit doesn't want to even consider the alternative. He doesn't answer. But under Ines' not-so-veiled threats, he agrees to assess Wendy. Ines makes it clear, though, that the unit Hermit calls his sister is property of the Prodigy Corporation. A prototype for a transhuman product, which, once refined, will create human immortality. There is no universe in which he takes her home. Big shout-out to Adrian Edmondson in this episode. This and his scenes with Boy K are fantastic. For some reason, I just love the little moment in the lab where Boy K bounces the little ball off the wall and he catches it without even flinching, like he can anticipate his every move. This isn't just a bulldog character used for intimidation on behalf of Cavalier. He comes off as thoughtful and intelligent and an important part of the conversation. Maybe there are more revelations in store for this character as well. Then there's Nibs. She was in a rough spot during the last episode, and things have taken an unexpected turn here in episode 4. I can honestly say I didn't have character claims Immaculate Conception on my Alien Earth bingo card, but here we are. Nibs tells Arthur and Dame Sylvia that she's pregnant. This isn't a childhood fancy or fun game to her. She sincerely believes it. Dame, rightly, sees this as a problem and offers to have a one-on-one with her in the hopes to figure things out. This is a terrific scene, and it plays out in a very tense way. A real element of danger has been introduced. Children may be ideal for this consciousness-transferring procedure for whatever reason, but the mind of a child is very delicate. Introduce trauma, which Nibs has experienced, and things get all the more complicated. We begin to question who the real adults in the room are. It's not just that these hybrids are children's minds inside adult bodies, but they're children's minds inside superhuman bodies. If a 9 or 10-year-old kid gets angry and throws a tantrum, it's usually not likely to be of any physical harm to the grown-ups. In this case, it is, and Nibs has abilities she's yet to understand and strength she's probably not even fully aware she's capable of, and would have no way to discipline if her emotions take over. Dame is very, very careful throughout this entire conversation. Still, she's not entirely innocent. She has a lot to answer for. If she really sees herself as Wendy's mother, then by right she's mother to the other 5 hybrids as well. That being the case, she's been favoring one child over the others just as much as Boy Cavalier has. I believe a part of Nibs recognizes this, or at least feels it, and her delusion could be a cry for help. Dame does her best. She tries to implement some reason into the back and forth. She realizes that at such a young age she may not entirely have a grasp on how someone may get pregnant, and despite her body being synthetic with no earthly way of becoming pregnant, she works on that level, which would probably be easier to process. But Nibs says she grew up on a farm and is well aware of the mechanics of it all, of sex and pregnancy and babies. All of that is understood. Except, she says, for Jesus. His mommy didn't do that, and he was born. Dame has absolutely no way to counter this, which is kind of telling of her character. She's completely willing to talk over all the biology of human reproduction in great detail, but bring religion into the conversation and it stops her in her tracks. Even in the future, all the wonder and innovation of science still can't seem to coexist with the mystery of religion. I asked in my review of the first episode, if this process transfers everything about a person into a synthetic body, does it transfer the soul too? There was no answer to this, and Dame Sylvia knows this and would rather not talk about it. She tries to direct the conversation to the functionality of Nibs' new body. Nibs refuses. She tries to get the child to open up about her experiences at the crash site. Nibs refuses. If this all goes beyond trauma and beyond delusion, then it is, in a way, an act of rebellion. A way to control her world. It's as if she's saying, I'm going to believe what I want to believe, and there's nothing you can do about it. With the looming threat of violence, it's Nibs who holds all the power here. What else can Dame really do, other than entertain these delusions until a better workaround can be found? Given everything in front of her, I think she acts smartly, and she handles the situation in an appropriate way. Things could have gone much differently, and that could have been her head washed up on the shore. I really loved this scene. It was one of the highlights of the episode for me. Essie Davis and Lily Newmark give incredible performances. Newmark especially, who once again stands out when there is so much going on in the show as a whole. For this episode, she spoke with the official Alien Earth podcast, and she had some really interesting insights into her character and this scene. Here's what she had to say. She certainly goes through the strongest existential crisis out of all of them. She's not enjoying this as much as the others, if at all. I think the only part she enjoys is having new friends, but for the most part, it's deeply traumatic for her. I touched on this briefly with Noah Hawley when we first met because it was, mentioned in one of the scripts I was given that she had trauma in her previous life, so they had to be careful with what they put her through because it could trigger that. I did wonder, and I spoke to Agla Hochstutter, who is the director of Episode 4, about the possibility of Nibs to have experienced physical abuse and for that to be playing out now, because this new trauma has triggered that previous trauma. I don't think it's so far-fetched to think that, and we did come to that vague conclusion together, but also I'm not the writer, so I don't want to speak for Noah. But because it was such a strong response, and pregnancy, what that has meant in the past within the Alien franchise has, signaled towards rape. It's not so far-fetched, it's incredibly bleak to consider, but we had to get there somehow. We had to find a reasonable reason for that very big response to the image, the Ocellus attack. I think she's using fantasy as a coping mechanism, as a form of escapism, which is obviously incredibly normal for a child to do. Deep down, she knows it's not true. It's a trauma response. The power of the mind is really incredible, and what's not entirely certain is whether the power of her mind, like with Wendy's capable of more things than the adult makers were aware of. And they don't know that maybe, perhaps, the power of her mind can alter her physical capabilities. And I mean, all of their powers are unprecedented. They're all part of this experiment. It might be to do with, like, that part of her circuit, around the abdomen. There might be something going on there. Of course, it is, impossible for her to be pregnant because she's not human physically. But the power of her mind might be, creating some kind of energy in that area. But I guess the point of the pregnancy is for Nibs to establish control over the situation. Like, to have this autonomy over her body and her new life because it's become clearer and clearer that she's not an autonomous being. This is all a very interesting perspective, and whether or not we see any of it come to light in the exact way described, it's such a great way of getting into the character's mindset. Lots to consider. But all of this still in play, I'll have to say there was one thing that immediately came to mind for me after Nibs makes the claim that she's pregnant. The sheep. What if the sheep, inside the Neverland lab, is pregnant? I didn't grow up on a farm myself, so I couldn't tell you offhand how long a sheep is pregnant for, but I did ask Google, and the answer to that is around 150 days. It's entirely possible that the sheep may have been impregnated before being acquired for scientific research. I bring this up because the scene right before Nibs' pregnancy revelation is the scene in the lab with the sheep and T. Ocellus. Animal lovers and Google AdSense eligibility bots beware, we're going to talk about it. The sheep is in captivity behind the glass. There's an opening through which the T. Ocellus parasite enters. There's an audio Easter egg this time around. It's the same sound we hear from the air ducts in the original Alien. By now, we're well aware of what this parasite can do, and what it's about to do to this poor sheep. The tentacles shoot out, it leaps and attaches to the face, and makes its way to the eyeball. After some violent thrashing, the tentacles scoop out the eye, which is still connected by veins and nerves and muscles dangling down its head, and the T. Ocellus then assimilates. Very quickly. In a very creepy moment, it tries to stand on its hind legs, almost like it's trying to act like a human. When that fails, it drops down to all fours, and the eyeball drops to the ground. Kirsch and Toodles note the recordings of the gamma waves, indicating problem-solving and concentration, have increased dramatically. This creature is highly intelligent, Kirsch says. Look at how it's watching us. They're observing it, and it's observing them right back. Boy K is just utterly fascinated. From what we've seen of this creature so far, I think it could actually be somewhat comparable to the alien from John Carpenter's The Thing. That creature got into a host's blood, but in whatever form it would take, it had a physical memory of its past encounters. In one part, we see some kind of fauna it must have taken over in the past, and we see the dogs form again at the end with the Blair monster. T. Ocellus may have this overarching telepathic memory of everything it infected during its life. It makes some kind of connection through its tentacles, even if it doesn't fully assimilate, as we saw with Nibs. It knows and understands how a human may act, but since it's attached to the sheep, it's unable to do so. And if it's able to partially infect a host and open up that psychic connection, then the host would know what the organism knows. If the T. Ocellus attached to the sheep recognized that the sheep was pregnant and their minds interlinked, it and the other interlinked minds may all share in that. It's possible. For an episode where the xenomorph alien had to take a little bit of a back seat, I'm glad we were at least able to get a good moment like this where another creature had some time to shine, and to fascinate and repulse. That's what I love from my sci-fi horror. Monsters that aren't just disgusting to look at and do terrifying things, but that are interesting in the way they operate. T. Ocellus has delivered there, and for a lot of people, it's been stealing the show. So much so, and I thought this was a joke at first, that they've already made it into a Funko Pop figure. That's pretty incredible. But don't worry, the Alien and Wendy are getting their figures too. While there wasn't much of the XX121 xenomorph in this episode to speak of, we do get to see a newly born chestburster at the very end of this episode. Although, I guess we can't really call it a chestburster, can we? This is the payoff to last week's ending, where we saw the knot of the xenomorph makings burrow its way into Hermit's isolated lung. As it would turn out, this is enough for the knot to infect and begin producing the xenomorph embryo. It bursts out of the lung, breaks through the glass, and it looks like Wendy is able to calm it down. We have this sort of snake charming scene between her and the creature. She speaks in the alien frequency that she's been practicing, and it listens. For me, this brought back some memories of Alien Covenant, actually, when David first sees his creation after its violent birth. There is a bonding going on. There's something familial, but as far as David is concerned, it just may be one-sided. That may be up to the viewer to determine. It's clear enough, though, with Wendy, they are communicating. They do understand each other somehow. Ugla Hawksdaughter, the director of this episode, also spoke to the Alien Earth podcast, and here's what she had to say of the scene. I think in a way it's nice to think about Wendy and her relationship to the chestburster, and how that develops as a love story almost. But I think we begin to sense, at the end of the episode, is that there's a loneliness inside of Wendy, and there's a growing feeling that she does not somehow belong at the facility. And of course, Boy K, he uses the fact that she can hear the alien sound to sort of manipulate her. And he says, I'll let you keep your brother. I'll let your brother stay here at the facility if you listen to the creatures and tell me what they're trying to say. So that also becomes obviously a motivation for her to learn this language and to find a way to communicate and understand what the creature is saying. But I think that's what's really quite special about that final scene of the episode, is that we sense that loneliness and this sort of connection that she seems to desire towards this little creature. And this is a storyline that obviously will progress in terms of how Wendy begins to realize that maybe her and this alien creature are not that different. Very interesting. That's as far as we're getting for now, but it was a great moment, and quite the way to end the episode, leaving us hanging for more. I loved this moment, and I thought the baby alien special effects were really good, and a really good design. True to the original 1979 version, but updated nicely. Throughout the entire Alien series, the chestbursters in particular are always kind of tricky. We don't always get to see much of them, at least not in full. More often than not, we just see the half of them coming out of the chest. Sometimes they have little arms, sometimes they don't, but here we get a really good look at it. I'm curious to see what's in store for it, but also dreading the possibility that the aliens might not be quite done with Hermit's body just yet. Also, in the closing of the episode, we get a sense that Slightly has chosen the human host to infect and bring tomorrow. That happens to be Hermit. Not that he had much of a selection beyond scientists that wouldn't be stupid enough to fall for his trick, and scary armed security personnel. Part of what drives this selection is a jealousy that Slightly has developed after learning Wendy is somehow allowed to have her brother with her. It's a fair enough objection. Why can't he or the others be allowed to have their family with them? In fact, if Prodigy really wanted to assess and ultimately refine these prototypes, wouldn't it be beneficial to have input from those who would know them best? The ones who would truly know that if life and essence and even soul continued on, instead of a dead body being left behind and all that's left is a machine with copied memories. Maybe they don't really want the answer to that. Maybe that's something that will be revealed later. But as always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoy this video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest from Alien Theory. My very special thanks today goes out to Nicholas Butta, our Wayland Yutani executive, and Gregory Ford, the Patreon Hive Praetorian. A very special thanks to Lady Anne in the Ellen Ripley Tier of Excellence. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for further information. You can also follow me on social media. Follow @alien_theory on X, formerly Twitter. Follow @AlienTheoryYT on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.